Hello and welcome to B2B Revenue Leaders. I'm your host, Dustin. As always, we're sponsored by Testimonial Hero. Testimonial Hero helps you close more deals faster by creating strategic video testimonials to be used at all stages of your buyer's journey. On today's episode, I'm joined by Sarah Noel Block from Tiny Marketing. We talk about how to effectively repurpose your content using a pillar piece, the importance of focusing on fewer channels, especially when you're a small team, and we both mentioned a few tools that we use to help speed up our content creation and repurposing. Hey, Sarah, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing well. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of different marketing things, everything from repurposing content, cutting and trimming and figuring out what to cut, what to trim, what to double down on. But I want to start with something you mentioned before this, which is, especially for small marketing teams, they should really narrow their marketing activities and focus on the customer journey to do that. Yeah. Let's unpack that a bit and start there.
Yeah, let's start there. I work with a ton of small businesses, and the issue is that you don't really have marketing. You're the entrepreneur, you're the CEO, but you also have to wear that marketing hat, and you don't know how to really market. So you end up doing what other people are doing, and that's usually going on every channel and testing out a lot of things and seeing what's new. But really what you should be looking at is that top 20% of your customers, what was their journey? How did they discover you existed in the first place? What questions did they have? What kind of content did they consume along the way? And how did you convert them? And you can sort of replicate that process by focusing on that top 20% customer journey and creating your marketing plan around that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I guess since you work with, like you said, entrepreneurs, people who maybe aren't marketers, figuring out that journey is probably hard for them. They probably don't know it. They're just putting content out. So how do you help them through that process?
Yeah, well, sometimes it takes a little bit of moving backwards where you actually have conversations with those customers that you really love and you just want to clone them.
Yeah.
So interview them and ask them those questions. I have a template that I use for questions that I need to ask my favorite customers so I can understand what their process was and then survey them. I always recommend that you do an annual survey with your customers and your email subscribers so you can understand what their journey was in discovering who you are, what kind of content they care about from you. And it can also help you discover what products or services make sense to launch in the future.
For sure. And that makes it a bit more of a two-way conversation, I find, especially if you don't know, what channels, what messaging. It's kind of this spray and pray, I'm going to post all this stuff everywhere
approach.
There's
a lot of praying happening.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like I said, they might not know how to measure that or what to do. So I'm curious, I know it's going to be incredibly unique depending on the business, the niche they're in. But are there common things you see that maybe could be cut when times are tough and they have to trim down a bit?
I honestly just did a whole series on that topic for my podcast, The Tiny Marketing Show. So it's really fresh.
Yeah.
So one thing that they can cut is being present on every channel.
Yeah.
I think that it makes sense to have a profile because of SEO. You get that SEO juice on that front page when you have a profile, but you can have a pinned post and say, I'm active on LinkedIn or whatever it is, because when you're on social, you need to actually be engaging with people in order for it to be effective. And you can't do that on every channel. So have those profiles, let them know where you spend your time, and then focus on that one profile or that one channel that your customers are active on. And make sure you're just batching time. I set a 15-minute timer every morning. And for 15 minutes, I just engage with posts from people in my network. And that's all I do. And it makes it a lot easier than trying to grow in every platform. So active on all channels, cut that. And if your email marketing is not doing the job, then maybe you should be cutting it a little bit. Make it more engaging, even if it's less. Even if you're doing it less. So the issue that I see a lot, at least in like the corporate sector, is that people are writing these newsletters that are very corporate centered. It's around the company rather than about you, the customer, and what they care about. So you're writing these like weekly or monthly newsletters that aren't getting any traction. So instead, pull it back and test out a new way of doing it, focusing on content that your customer cares about. Maybe test it out and do it like once a quarter, see how it goes, and then move it up from there.
Totally. Yeah. I don't know how many newsletters, I subscribe to on a whim, and then I'm too lazy to unsubscribe, I guess. And I just delete as they come in, because it's kind of the same thing every month, like you said, and really focused on them and what they're doing.
Yeah. And it's not really going to do the job because nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about me. They care about them.
Yeah, totally. We're all a little bit selfish, and that's okay.
We're all selfish. Another thing I'd cut is if you're creating too much content. So I'm a content marketer. I love content. But if you are creating worthless content that's not going to be moving the needle, do it less. Like spend, let's talk about core content for a second. You can spend 1 hour interviewing an influencer or a subject matter expert within your niche and repurpose that to high heaven. And that can be your content. It still allows you to show up consistently, like every day with some sort of content, but you're not spending time creating a bunch of little blog posts that aren't going to move the needle.
Yeah, so that's the approach we take actually with this podcast, which is kind of meta to talk about that on here, but that's that's like our pillar piece, right? Where I talk to people like you who are experts in a particular thing. We chop it up into content. It gives us ideas for blog posts, and we can repurpose the transcripts. Just because you work with tiny marketing teams all the time, we're a tiny marketing team. I don't have a full-time SEO blog writer, and I'm not going to pay $5,000 a month for an agency to come in and write me a few blog posts, right?
That is valid. And that's exactly what I recommend small marketing departments or companies that have no marketing department do. Have one pillar piece of content, even if it's once a quarter, and then you can spread it out throughout the months.
Yeah, the one thing I've talked to people about this before, and the one thing I find is some people think it can get like a little bit repetitive, reposting the same stuff. My thought there is you're probably not that important, and people aren't following every single piece of content.
There's several theories on this.
Yeah, let's dive into those then.
So one, when you're repurposing, you're not sharing the same exact content all the time. You can create, like from one hour piece of content, I create at least 20 pieces of content that are new. It's brand new stuff. So all of that is being spread out. Two, if you're recycling content, which is what people are talking about and usually mix up with repurposing, if you're recycling content, like 10% of your followers are actually seeing the content the first time you send it out. Yeah. So you need to be sending out more than once, or you're wasting your time. And what else was I going to say? Oh, you can repurpose in lots of ways, where you can take those smaller pieces of content and make them into bigger pieces and create lead magnets out of them. So you can do it in so many ways that isn't repetitive. Oh, I remember. You need to stay on topic anyway. Your audience wants to hear about your solution and they want it for a particular audience. So you need to be talking about the same topic all the time. So it's not repetitive. It's what they want to hear from you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially if you niche down and have a very target market audience and, offering, super important there. I'm curious, like we do this with the podcast. I've done it kind of with like webinar, coffee talk or fireside chat type things before. Those are all audio visual. I'm curious for people who either aren't comfortable there or their audience maybe doesn't, skew that way. Any other thoughts on how to repurpose content and come up with a pillar piece?
Yeah, if you don't want that audio visual aspect of it, you're not comfortable on camera, that's okay. You can still do the interview process, and it also helps you build relationships and partners with other people in your industry or potential customers. You can still do that piece and take the transcripts and create tons of different stuff from it. You can create audiograms that's using like an AI voice if you don't want your voice out there. You can take, or if you're comfortable, take clips of that audio and create those audiograms. You can take those transcripts and turn them into several blog posts. I like to structure my influencer conversations, interviews in 3 parts. So it's really easy to repurpose. So I outline it ahead of time and I know exactly how I'll be repurposing it later. But that gives you like 3 guide or pillar level content pieces that are written that are on each of those subjects. And then you can write content that is like anywhere where you would have a headline, you can expand that and turn that into a shorter one if you were going to use like a hub and spoke model to your content if you're focusing on writing. And then of course there's email marketing, there's social media marketing. So there's a ton of different ways you can go about it.
Yeah, I think the transcript is a key point, and like AI helps us there personally a decent amount. I don't have it right for me, but having it, summarize this topic, pull out the key points. It will tell me, like we use Toasty AI we're testing out, which is you upload a podcast. AI. Yeah, toastyai.com. Very confusing URL. I typed toasty.ai a billion times. We're testing it out. It's early, but you upload a podcast, it will give you the timestamps of the key topics, a suggestion for a LinkedIn post, suggestion for a blog post. And then we rewrite it and put our own spin on it. But it gets me, halfway there, saves me a ton of time. So
yes,
lots of cool ways to do that.
Podchaser, I think, is the name of the company, but it's really similar.
Nice.
Where you take your RSS feed and you put it in there, and then it'll create all of that. I really liked that it pulls out any resources we talked about, because that's something I miss all the time. What resources did we talk about? Oh, I have to tell you about another tool. Hold on. You'll probably have to edit this a little bit because I have to look it up real quick. Opus Clip.
Okay.
OPUS Clip. So for people like you and me that take our video portion of our podcast and turn it into shorts, reels, etc., you can take your YouTube video version of it and put that URL in there, and it will create 10 shorts or reels for you, and it adds in the transcripts. It even grades it to tell you how engaging it is and any tweaks you should make, and you could edit it. And it does it all for you. Like it picks out the clips for you.
Yeah, no, that's especially on shorts. I know you're active there. You're posting YouTube shorts, and I find, full disclosure, I always sucked at YouTube. I had no luck at other companies at YouTube. But now we're starting to see a little bit of success and traction on shorts, and they're picking up. I'm curious what you're seeing there. Same.
I started off, I'm a big believer in pillar content. You don't have to do everything, just do one thing good.
Yep.
And I started off, though, as my pillar content was live streams. So I did that, and then I repurposed that backwards into clips and podcasts. But I still didn't get much traction. I was getting the most views on LinkedIn for my lives until shorts. When I started creating shorts, that's when I started to get a lot more engagement. Now my YouTube analytics are like, you're doing 50% better than last month. And it makes a huge difference because it pushes it out. Social media tip, anytime they're starting a new thing, they want to push it out. They're going to, if you are an early adapter and you get on it, they're going to push out your content and make sure people see it. So you'll grow a lot faster if you're an early adapter.
Yeah, and I find most of the different different social channels as well, they seem to be making the shift to not prioritize, but kind of boost smaller creators a little bit to balance things out. I've noticed that personally on LinkedIn, to the detriment of many, including some of our posts as well. The algorithm's a little wonky, but I'm seeing more variety there. Like I'm seeing more content pushed out from different people instead of the same 6 people over and over.
Yeah, I am too, now that you say that. And it has I've seen less engagement and I've seen more people. So I was like, why does LinkedIn hate me lately?
I think I've seen that a lot. A lot of people feeling that right now. But yeah, they change their algorithm constantly and I can never quite figure it out, but we'll get there.
Me either.
Cool. So I think we talked, around this probably a decent amount, and probably bits and pieces of it. But before we, started recording, you mentioned your reach framework for growth.
Yes.
I'd love to unpack that a little bit and dive into that.
It's not mine. It's it actually exists, but it's something that I think is incredibly important for small businesses. So reach is actually the first aspect of it. It's the RACE framework. But it's reach as in grow your audience. And I work primarily with service-based businesses. So that means your personal brands and your client-facing employees' personal brands matter a lot because people are working with you. They're not working with the product. So building that audience on social media and your email list is super important. And then interacting with them. Like I was saying before, I just set up a time and then I make sure to interact with them every single day. It's just 15 minutes because I just don't have the energy for social media that much.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then converting them so they're on your email list. So create those lead magnets that are super special and specific for your audience. Like, for example, I have a series of blog posts around quarterly marketing planning that do really, really well in Google. So I created a magnet specific for that, and it immediately started converting people. And just making sure that that's available to people as you're interacting with people on socials and you're talking about quarterly marketing planning, for example, put it in the link in comments so people can get it and grab on, and then engaging with them long term. So creating those nurture email sequences so you're top of mind. And when they do realize, hey, I have this problem and you can solve it, you're the person they think of. So that's the reach method. And it's not mine. Or that's the RACE method. And it is not mine. Let me see. Whose is it? I don't know. I'll tell you later. You can put it in.
We'll edit that. Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I like one thing you mentioned there on the services side. So this is my first time working in a services business. My background's mostly SaaS, so similarities but quite different.
Yeah.
But you really see, using the founder's personality, their face, their voice, it resonates a lot more than nameless corporate entity, pushing out random content.
Yes. I have so many people who come to me and like, how can I grow my LinkedIn business profile? I'm like, you can't. It's a landing page. That's okay. Let it be what it is.
Yeah.
What you need to do is boost your employees' profiles and personal brands and make sure that it leads them to that. Because basically people go to brand profiles on LinkedIn to find their website.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No, absolutely. And I think the nice thing is it's kind of interesting. I think LinkedIn finally recognizes this. So, they're launching, what are they calling it? Not influencer ads, but basically you can run ads from a person at your company rather than the company.
I didn't know that. I don't do a lot of paid, so I'm like out of the loop on that.
Yeah, I got it. I saw someone post about it. It's coming out apparently Q2. So pretty soon. I'm a little terrified by it, honestly, because I'm not going to know what's a real post, what's an ad, what's going to show up in my feed. But I'm also super interested in testing it because it's a good way to get that reach and exposure when the algorithm's, cutting you off a little bit.
Like me.
Yeah. Cool. So, Sarah, thanks so much for talking through, all the ideas on repurposing. You put out, as you mentioned, a lot of content on this topic and others. So if our listeners want to connect, learn more, consume some of that content, where should they go?
So I have a podcast. It's the Tiny Marketing Show. And I repurpose it like crazy. So it's all over YouTube also. And on all the socials, I'm Sarah Noel Block, my full name.
Okay, awesome. So we'll include those links and they'll reach out. And again, Sarah, thank you for the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode. My key takeaway is just the importance of using personal brands and a more natural human tone when creating content. It's just really easy to gloss over, the 20th corporate sounding newsletter you have in your inbox or ignore posts from a company on LinkedIn. And nowadays, people really need to trust you before they consider buying from you. So putting yourself out there and using your personal brand is a great way to build that trust in a real, authentic way. Thanks again for listening, and I'll be back every Tuesday with a new episode.